Good afternoon, everyone. Andy Jacob here with the DotCom Magazine Entrepreneur Spotlight Series. I am very excited about today's show. We've got Mr. Marcus Norman, who is the CEO and host of a podcast you've probably heard of called the GentlemenStyle Podcast. And this podcast is available on iTunes and Google Play. I've had a chance to listen to some of the podcasts, and they're very informative, very interesting. And Marcus talks about the hot topics in society, and he talks about the challenges that men grow up with in life. And I am so excited to have Marcus on the show today. Marcus, welcome to the Entrepreneur Spotlight Series.
Thank you for having me. I am so excited. Thank you. I appreciate it so much. This is exciting.
Marcus, you have been able to put together a podcast and have brought some very informative people onto your podcast. What gave you the idea to get started with such an important podcast about men and growing up and what our society is offering men as they deal with life's challenges?
Absolutely, Andy. And as you know, as you saw in different episodes, my podcast is very diverse as we talk about all the topics. We talk about relationships, finances, health, wealth building, money management, and investing for the future, Bitcoin. So a multitude of things. And so what I seek with the show, what I seek with my podcast is to give back with the information that is not easily accessible, and to support and to uplift. And so if my podcast can help someone, inspire someone to either get in business or take their business to the next level, or even improve their family life. Because if we're talking about relationships, marriage, finances, that serves in its own way. So I intend to bring experts in the field, whether it be psychologists, finance specialists, bankers, money managers, real estate investors, real estate philanthropists, and bring them to the stage and let my audience ask the questions, including my own, to answer those questions that are deep rooted and deep inside of us all, that we all want answered. So that's the point of the show.
That's beautiful. And I know that you've got something on your podcast that says leading your homes with God at the forefront. I really, really like that. That's awesome. Now, on your podcast, you have some amazing people on. They all seem to have the same fabric about them. They're sort of excited about life. They have passion about life. They want to help other people, and that really comes through on the podcast. When it comes to the GentlemenStyle Podcast, what area are you finding your listeners most interested in learning about? What's the biggest challenges that your listeners are having right now in their lives?
The biggest challenge in the analytics and the data is telling me that my audience really is dialing in and tuning in to the real estate and the passive income piece. Not that relationships aren't important, but they're really sinking their teeth into what else is out there. What other types of businesses out there? What are the things I can do with my $600 stimulus check? What can I do last year when I was receiving $600 a week? What can I do with that money? Because I may not necessarily need that money right now. So people are really, really enjoying the investing side of my show, and they're really sinking their teeth into that because they want to know. I can't go into a bank and sit down with my financial advisor. So how do I gain access to that information without putting myself at risk of COVID? So that's what people.
Completely. Yeah, I understand that completely, Marcus. And that shines through with some of the topics that you have and some of the experts that you have. You talk about this passive income. Some of your podcasts talk about investing in Airbnbs or the VRBOs of the world. Some of them talk about house flipping and things like that. And we also know that successful entrepreneurs, Marcus, if they have a strong relationship and a strong home life, that only increases their opportunity to be successful outside the home in the venture that they want to work toward. So let's talk about some things, Marcus, that are of top of the mind and some questions that I've had burning in the back of my head for the few weeks while we've tried to get you on the show. And thanks again for making time today. when you're putting together a successful podcast like the GentlemenStyle Podcast, when you got started, what was the most important thing to get started? Was it just to kind of get one leg in front of the other and just sort of sign up and get it going? Or was it more thinking about it thoroughly before you took the first step? How did you get started?
Mr. Andy, you hit it right on the head. The hardest thing that was tough about getting things started is I was putting out a lot of material and I was putting out a lot of great content. And it was just the aspect of getting it to the masses and having the platforms to get it to the masses. And one of the things I learned from these great interviews is we got to hire people to do the things we are not passionate. My passion is I love the great interviews and I love talking to people, but my passion is not necessarily marketing or advertising. So I learned to hire the experts to bring those eyeballs to the platform. And once I started doing that and I started hiring people to evaluate my show and tell me what I can do better. I mean, if you look at my channel, GentlemenStyle Podcast, you'll see every episode is different. I improved everything. I added new equipment, microphones, speakers, headsets, platform, transferred from Zoom to other platforms. And all of that is to serve my audience. That has nothing to do with me. And that's what it's about, with God at the forefront and God motivating me. One of the unique things is I gave up on the show a long time ago. And when I did, friends, family, and people who tuned in, people who were tuning in secretly, never said a word. But when I gave up on the show, they asked me to come back and they said, you were putting out great content. Please don't give up. So I gave it a bigger push when I came back. And that's the show that you see today. It is, even in the past 7 months, if you look at my show from the past 7 months, it has grown tremendously, and it's all for you, for everyone.
Well, the show definitely has grown. There's a lot of people tuning in because of the great content. And Marcus, you hit on something that's phenomenal with regard to being a great entrepreneur. Is sometimes you want to stay in your lane. You want to specialize in what you do well, and then let the experts in the things that you don't maybe do as well help you so that you can have a complete picture. And you've been a great example of that on your show, because you focused on the interviews. And what you also said is very, very interesting, because what you've been able to do is look at your listeners, hear what they had to say, use data and analytics, and then make your experience, your user experience, much better for your listeners. And that's a great entrepreneurial story that many younger entrepreneurs certainly need to listen to as they forge forward in their careers. And existing entrepreneurs, whether they be Inc. 5000 or Fortune 500 executives, they should also keep that in mind, because at the end of the day, Marcus Norman, the CEO and host of the GentlemenStyle Podcast, knows one thing, that you have to make your end user happy. And that's what he's been able to do. Now, Marcus, you mentioned that a lot of the listeners, they have this thirst and this appetite for learning about finances. So if we talk about where they're currently at and where they want to go, it sounds to me like they want to learn about how to sort of set themselves free by having their money work for them instead of working for their money. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. That's exactly what I'm saying. The audience wants to know what to do with their money. One of the unique things that came out of this pandemic, and it could be a blessing and a curse in the wrong hands, is the CARES Act allowed people who were exposed to COVID or had a life changing event with COVID to withdraw up to $100,000 of your 401k without penalty, as long as you experienced a COVID-19 related event in 2020. And so that opened the door to many people who experienced a COVID related event and were able to withdraw some capital from their 401k. Well, if I need 10,000 and I have 100,000, maybe I can reinvest this. Maybe I can replant this. Come to God and come to the realization, God, what is this blessing? Right? I've been able to keep all my bills. I've been able to pay my rent. I haven't been evicted. What is this blessing for? And people are hungry and thirsty for that knowledge. And so that's what the platform does is whether it be real estate investing. One of the unique guests I had was Miss Evie Brooks in Panama. She has a agricultural platform that allows investors to invest in agriculture, the agricultural industry. There's real estate in there, but it's also the dirt. And that's a unique experience. That's a unique investment platform to invest your money in. And you get a one-on-one coaching session with Evie Brooks or her team members to find out what in Panama, because they have the agriculture, they have land, they have buildings. And so that's a unique platform. And with that package, she also flies you out VIP style to go out there and see what your money is going to be invested. So it's a investment boot camp before there for about, I believe it was $1,500 round trip, flies you out, VIP service, food, hotel, lodging, and fly you back home. You can't beat that. That's unique. And you can't get your financial advisor isn't going to tell you about that.
See, that's very interesting. And even the little pot of information about the 401k plan, I didn't even know that. So I need to listen to more of the GentlemenStyle Podcast, because that's a great tidbit of information about the 401k plans. Now, we have a lot of interesting people on the show. You mentioned about what's happening in Panama. And by the way, that Latin America area is really blowing up. And we've had some experts from Latin America on the show, as you know. And when we think about your podcast and the type of interviews that you're doing, you also want the people who listen to sort of do some housekeeping around their home. Let God into their home, at the forefront of their home, to help them with their relationships. And why don't you speak about that a little bit? Because, men are growing up in our society, and some of them have challenges with regard to their relationships and letting God into their home. So maybe you could speak about that with what you've learned and some sage advice and wisdom with regard to that topic.
Absolutely. So the COVID-19, this pandemic, and I always mention it as a blessing and a curse. What COVID-19 has caused us to do is it's caused us to focus in on things that were important, but it probably wasn't important until COVID-19 came in the picture. But now we're at home. Right now we're working from home, or unfortunately we may have been laid off. But now COVID-19 has caused us to take a deep rooted look at our money. What am I doing with my money? Why don't I have an emergency fund? Why is my wife upset with me? Why are the kids always this way? Now families are now seeing what their school teachers were going through. Because now the kids are learning virtually and they're home all the time. Wow, maybe I shouldn't have been that tough on that school teacher, because my kids are actually they're difficult. They're difficult to deal with. So COVID-19 has brought us to the forefront of what have always should have been at the forefront of our mind, and what we should have always been paying attention to. Family should have always been at the forefront. I'm not going to work for me. I'm going to work to support my household. That should have never left focus, but COVID-19 has caused that. And so people are now, they're praying together. They're learning together. Honey, how can I serve you? And so it's a trickle down effect. I serve God as the way he wants me to serve, and he endows me with the ability to provide this great content. And now my audience is taking that and internalizing that at home. I'm just a servant. I'm just the vessel, right? This is not me. None of this is not magic, right? This is all him. And this is his way of reaching his people and teaching them. Take a look at your wife. Why is she unhappy? Why are your kids unhappy? Well, the finances aren't the way. Are you serving God? Are you tithing? Are you loving your wife? When's the last time you guys went on a date night? And not this pre-COVID date night because you can't go to the restaurant. How about a picnic in the park? How about a bike ride? Right? And those don't require any kind of financial strain, and it gives you that time back to focus on what should have been important all along. And so that's what this is doing.
That's words to the wise, Marcus. And you're known for being able to take a situation and find a blessing in that situation. And that's what you're teaching. That's what you're preaching. This is a great example for entrepreneurs, because in entrepreneurship, sometimes you skin your knees. Sometimes you hit a pothole. Sometimes things don't go as planned. As a matter of fact, a lot of times they don't go as planned. And you have to be able to get yourself off your behind and get going and keep walking and keep moving and moving forward. And things that happen to you at the time, a lot of entrepreneurs don't look at it as a blessing. They look at it as a curse. But my friend, Marcus Norman, he's able to find the blessing in those things. And that's what he's teaching on the podcast. And he's bringing these types of people on the podcast that also have an entrepreneurial experience themselves, where everything has not gone perfectly for them, but they've looked at these little potholes as opportunities for improvement. So let's talk about that from a high level, Marcus. You're able to sort of look at things and look at everything as a blessing. For example, you mentioned COVID-19. Well, some people look at that as a curse, and it's easy to look at it like a curse. But in your mindset and the way that you look at things, you're finding the things about that you can pull from to be positive about and be empowered from. So let's talk about that. Where did you get that mindset?
I got that mindset long before when I exited the military. I was on the verge of being homeless, and I was on the verge. I didn't know how I was going to pay my bills. I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know because I had just gotten out of the military. I wasn't finding a job. I wasn't able to find employment, and all credit cards were maxed out. All my bills were past due, and I was about to lose my home. And in that moment, when I was ready to give up, I remember getting in my car and my phone pinged from my bank account. I received a $10,000 deposit from a disability check claim that I had filed when I got out the military. That is what lit me on fire. And that's when I reconnected with God. And that's when he showed his face to me. That's when he showed me that I'm here with you and I never left you, but I need you to remember who I am. And so that passion was ignited in me. And I said, what do I do with this? What do I do with this? And it saved me. I was able to obviously get back on my feet, but it showed me his magnificence. And in that magnificence, in his grace, I learned that if I can come back, if he can save me, someone who is completely disconnected from him, then he can reach everyone. He can change you, and he can show you his power. He can show you how it really is. And in the beginning, everything, God created everything. And if you truly believe that statement, if he created everything, then money, finances, all of that was made by him, and it was good. So I want to get you back to the good, because that's when I learned that money isn't evil here. My relationship wasn't evil. All these things aren't evil. Is what I do with it. And I make sure that I'm walking with him in it and growing with him in it. And that's where the magic happens. That's when you see him shining through. The show is a reflection of God's grace and his love for a man that was about to lose it all. And I stand before you today as a witness to his love and to give back and serve. The biggest servant is never goes broke. You can't go broke by giving. No one ever goes broke by giving. So that's what I aim to do. The show is it doesn't charge anything. You can watch the whole beginning to end. That is an incredible story, Marcus. Very, very motivating, very powerful, emotional, where you came out of the military and things just weren't going your way. But again, this is the magic of Marcus Norman. He looks back at that situation and now he can see that it really was a blessing, because he has this sort of this yin and yang where he can look at this situation
and now look at it as something that's powerful, that's empowering him. So he's not letting it take his energy away from him. And the same thing happens in entrepreneurship. When you have a situation that goes awry, don't let it take your energy away from you. Use it to empower you. Use it to learn from. Use it to do something for somebody else to make them better. And if you do that, empowered by God, as Marcus says, then God will shine his light through you onto what you're doing and show you the way. So that's very, very powerful.
Exactly. My last final nitpick point. If COVID, if you lost your job because of COVID, well, guess what? You probably weren't. I mean, some people weren't even happy at their job. So if you lost your job due to COVID, but you weren't happy, then maybe that was God moving you into position. So there's always something. And I'm not speaking to the families members or people who lost loved ones. That's still unfortunate. It's still tragic. And God still loves you and he's still with you. Right. But that doesn't mean that it's over and he's going to be there. I just wanted to make that fun.
True. You've got it, Marcus. So let's turn the story a little bit and talk about some financial relationship aspects that you've learned from speaking with so many phenomenal guests on your show at the GentlemenStyle Podcast. So when we're talking about finances right now, I know a lot of people are going to want to tune in and hear all your shows, but at a high level, what area, if somebody's saying to themselves, I'm listening to Marcus here, it sounds really interesting. I'm going into the podcast. I'm going on iTunes. I'm going on Google Play. I'm going to start listening to every single one of these shows. I'm going to, just binge on all the shows. But right now, they might be saying to themselves, I've got a little bit of money in my 401k. I'm a little bit worried and concerned about investing. I've never done it before, but man, I'm motivated here. From your perspective, is there an area that maybe makes the most sense for someone that hasn't done it before, that maybe wants to dip their toe into it and do it for their family?
And so the area of that I recommend, that I do myself, is real estate. Right. You hear it all the time. You hear about it all the time. I invest in a lot of different things. I own an ATM business. I own a real estate company, property management company, but real estate, done well. And this is no big math. I bought a duplex property. That was my first investment property. Duplex. I looked at the area for a 2-bedroom duplex, 2-bedroom, 1 bath on each side. The mortgage on that duplex was $1,000 a month. When I looked at the area around that duplex, the rent for a 2-bedroom, 1 bath was going between $800 and $1,000 a month. So stay with me here. So $800 to $1,000 a month. So that tells me that I can charge one side anywhere between $800 and $1,000 a month. The mortgage was $1,000. So I rented out both sides for $850. That brings in $1,700 in cash flow every single month. So I pay my mortgage $1,000 and I keep $700. That's not crazy math. And I tell people, real estate, you're always going to need a place to live. People are always going to need a place to live. Even in an eviction moratorium, even with people losing their jobs, people will forego a lot of things, but they oftentimes, especially if there's a family, they will not forego their roof over their head, their home. And so if you're hesitant, you're sitting on capital, check out the podcast. And that's the reason why also I bring experts on, because if you have capital and you don't want to do this alone, now you have a reference point. That's why I bring the experts in, so you can connect with them and they can mentor you and guide you with that capital, so you're not doing it alone. But on a basic level, real estate, $700 a month, I'm bringing in every single month from that property. It's not crazy math. It just works for my household. I'm okay with $700 a month. Positive cash flow from my duplex. That's not the science or anything. It's simple math.
That is fantastic. And of course, Robert Kiyosaki has a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. he teaches something very similar that, there's liabilities and there's assets, and typically your home is really a liability if you're living there and it's not producing you any cash flow. But in your particular case with the duplex, you've turned a situation of real estate into an asset because it's producing income for you, positively cash flowing, $600-700 a month, maybe a little bit less after you pay your taxes and insurance, but still it's a wonderful, easy way to cash flow. And we know, because we've already discussed it with Marcus, that sometimes even with real estate, you may skin your knee a little bit, but in the long term, you're going to learn from that and you're going to be able to get better. And the good news about it is that if you don't really know much about real estate, you don't have to do it alone. Just log into Marcus's podcast, listen to the GentlemenStyle Podcast. He's got the experts on there that will help guide you. And I'm sure that if you have questions about the episode, you can reach out to those people or even to Marcus, who will connect you with the right mentors to make sure you're on your path to success and to greatness, which is what we all want. So that makes a lot of sense, Marcus. So real estate's the place. So let's talk about the podcast, because maybe you're inspiring other young people to say to themselves, I kind of like teaching people. I like the idea of asking people questions and learning and being intrigued about what they're doing. So starting a podcast, just hit on that just for a minute. Is this as simple as going into iTunes or finding a podcast provider and just putting one out there to begin with and then learning from that and getting better and better and better? How does that work?
Absolutely. So podcasting, I say, is a very unique business. And just at a baseline level, if you're interested in getting started, figure out first who you are and what you want to talk about. And what is your core? What's at your core of your podcast? If it's going to be a real estate show, is it going to be a financial show? Is it going to be a money management show, a credit card show? Figure out where you thrive at, what you enjoy learning about the most. And then have an outline of those couple episodes, about 6 to 12 shows already fabricated if you're going to be interviewing or if you're going to be speaking, and then lining that up and then decide on whether you want to be an audio only or an audio and video platform, or do you just want to be video? Because some people want privacy, and so if I want privacy, I may just want to be audio only. My job, my employer may not like. I've heard of financial experts, financial advisors, because of their fiduciary responsibility, losing their job because they're giving tips and secrets on their show. And so you may, depending on your profession, you may want to just be audio only and not necessarily and work behind the company name. And then once you figure that out, you have your outline of 6 to 12 shows, then it's launching. Like you said, you hit on it. I appreciate you for touching on that. It's having the outline, having the show. And then if I'm audio, then I need a microphone. Man, these days you can record a whole show on your cell phone. A young lady asked me the other day, I said, all you need is a ring light. You got the latest iPhone. The iPhone does top-notch photos. Just record on your iPhone, have the ring light shining on you, and you can start your show and then go with the platform, either Anchor, Spotify, Google Play, YouTube, all these platforms. Where do you want to launch at? And then does that platform serve you in the best way to reach the audio people that you anchor, if that's how you want to reach your audience, and start from there.
Yeah, I love it. And you've done it and you started it and you're going. Now, something interesting, and I happen to have a little inside information, is that Marcus's podcast, of course, is called the GentlemenStyle Podcast. But that doesn't mean that only gentlemen are listening to the podcast. There's a lot of women listening to it as well because they want in on the information. So let's just talk about that a little bit, because I know women want to listen to it because it's going to help them with their relationship and it's going to help them with their homes, leading with God at the forefront. So let's talk about that. It's called the GentlemenStyle Podcast, but there's a lot of women listening to it as well.
Absolutely. So there's a lot of women that are listening to it as well, because one of the things that I always heard that Marcus, you're such a gentleman. Marcus, you're such a gentleman. I'm not from the United States. And so when I came to the United States, the culture of men threw me off, and it was different and what I wasn't expecting. So I started a platform to cater and serve men. Women tune in because they're either taking it on board, or they're showing their husbands and say, honey, check this out, take a look, or they're showing it to their children, because my show is also kid friendly. And so they're showing it to their kids as like, son, and it's opening the door. It's opening the dialogue, right? Because that's important. Now I can have the conversation because Marcus Norman broke the ice. And so let's talk about finances. Let's talk about money. Let's talk about our spirituality in this home. And let's talk about how is it pleasing to God or not pleasing to God? Are we in alignment in this relationship? Are we not in alignment? And so women are really enjoying the show. And I'm interviewing men and women. So my most recent interview, I interviewed a business owner. She owns not one, not two, 7 businesses. And she started with nothing. She owns a restaurant, doesn't know how to cook. She owns a salon, doesn't do hair. And so that is powerful to hear from a man or woman who is considering getting a business, or that has been holding them back from starting their own company. Well, I don't have my beautician's license, so I can't run a salon. That's false. You can. Here's the expert who's done it multiple times. And so that's why men and women are just tuning into the show, and they love it. They love it. And it helps. It helps you get a good, solid start.
See, I love this. And this, you mentioned something, Marcus, that's very fascinating to me, and I'm sure very fascinating to the people watching this. And of course, the people that listen to the GentlemenStyle podcast already know about it. And it's the fact that it's family friendly. So if you're a father or a mother and you've got a teenager boy or girl, and let's just say you have a good hot topic about real estate. Well, when I was in school, they didn't teach us anything about real world things, about, rental properties or cash flow or anything like that. We never learned about that. If you were lucky, you learned it from your father or your mother or an aunt or an uncle. But here, a family can listen to Marcus's podcast. They can actually pause it at certain sections, talk to their, let's say, teenage boy or girl about what Marcus and his guests were talking about, and bring them in so that they can learn early about all of these things that they should be learning early. So is that one of the reasons why you did the podcast as a family-friendly podcast, so that families together could grow together?
Absolutely. That's exactly it. You hit the nail on the head. Oh my gosh, you found the secret sauce, right? That's it. That's what families can do now. I interviewed a guest about starting an ATM business, and I received a message several weeks ago from that same family thanking me because the platform, that episode, allowed them to start their own ATM business. And now their daughter is going to have an ATM dedicated to them that's going to fund their college account. So that 7-year-old, that 5-year-old who parents didn't have a plan necessarily yet for that college fund, now they can have an ATM, open an account in the young man or young daughter's name. And now when that child hits 18 or 25 and they go off to college, they can have a very, very strong down payment, or even pay off, depending on what university or college you go to, can pay off their entire tuition themselves. Oh, by the way, son or daughter, you can, if you take care of this machine, this machine right here is what funded your college tuition. We're going to turn it over to you. And if you take care of this machine, it will take care of you. So now those kids can now attend college debt free, and they can now have an income, a consistent daily income of cash coming in from this machine. And that opens the door. That allows families to open that dialogue and have that conversation because of something that they weren't even aware of.
That's awesome. And that show with regard to the ATM business can be found on the GentlemenStyle Podcast. It sounds terrific. If I'm listening to this show and have some younger people or younger children, that might be an interesting show to watch immediately. Maybe go right to that one when you log on to the podcast on Apple or on the Google Play Store. So in closing, Marcus, I wanted to talk a little bit about something that is very important now. We have a lot of folks that are having some challenging times. And you're an expert in finding the blessings in those challenging times. You already sort of shared your personal story and journey with us, which I appreciate. And that gives us a lot of insight into why you're passionate about what you do. But there's people out there, whether they're watching the show or maybe someone watching the show has a cousin or an aunt or an uncle or a child or a niece or a nephew that's having a tough time. And we're seeing more and more of this sort of depression and challenges that people are having, especially now in the last 10, 12 months with the pandemic. So for those people that are sort of searching or reaching for some kind of a light, maybe you could give them some words of encouragement or some Marcus Norman sort of thoughts before we leave today, because I know you've been instrumental in helping so many people, and I know that you probably can help these people in their time of need. So maybe I give you the floor just a little bit to talk to these folks and look them right in the camera and tell them that, it's going to get better. So maybe you could help us out and help those people out that we're talking about.
Absolutely. And thank you for that. You are incredible. You are amazing. And you are put on this earth for a divine and destined purpose. And if you are still here, if you woke up this morning, you are still here. So that means that purpose is not fulfilled yet. And so if you're here, if you're watching this, I want you to know that He, our Father in heaven, is not done with you. And so every day you wake up with life, breath, and renewed strength, and you have the ability to go out and make a difference. Make that difference count. It doesn't matter. The biggest thing I always remind myself about is, what are they going to know me for when I pass away? What's going to be carved on my headstone? I don't want to be remembered for how much money I attained or how little money I attained. I want to be remembered for the difference and impact I left on this world. And if that is what sets the tone for me every single day when I wake up, then you are unstoppable. Nothing can get you down. Nothing can take you out, because He woke you up. And so keep going, keep pressing forward, and don't give up, because He's not done with you yet.
Wow. Well, we cannot beat that. When we booked you, I was so excited, and this is everything and more of what I thought it would be, Marcus. You are a testament to what you're doing at the GentlemenStyle Podcast. You're a testament to walking the walk, talking the talk. You're humble, you're kind, and you're compassionate. And those are three things that are beautiful. And I'm so delighted that I had a chance to be able to speak with you today. Thank you so much for cutting some time out of your busy day with everything you've got going on with all of your business and the podcast, of course. And I just wanted to say, Marcus, that we wish you nothing but the absolute best, and keep powering through, because what you're doing for the people that are listening to your show is truly incredible, and you're making a huge difference. So thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you, Andy. I appreciate it very much.